Sure for that today, Raid Shadow Legends. Welcome to the video. I am joined by Deadwood Jedi. Deadwood, it has been a minute, dude. How you doing? Welcome back to the channel.
I'm doing great, man. It's always a pleasure to be here. Always enjoy talking with you, chatting about whatever, and I'm excited about
Yeah.
today's subject. I think this is going to be kind of fun.
Yeah, it's live arena. This is actually going to be a two-part collab here. We're going to talk about the new dungeons on Deadwood's channel. We're going to talk about live arena, things that we would recommend you guys do, things that we're doing right now to prepare for this update content. It sounds like Deadwood, we're going to get the dungeons a little bit before live arena, just based on what they said, but we don't really know a timeline, but who knows? By the time these videos are uploaded, the dungeons could be live because we're expecting it pretty soon, right?
Yeah, exactly. I would imagine that it's going to be coming sometime within the next 2 weeks, and that could be tomorrow. It could be today.
It
By the
could
time
be.
this
I hope
video
it's
comes
not
out, I
today.
don't really know.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it's not today, but yeah, I imagine the new dungeons are going to be coming very soon. So I'm definitely excited for us to go on my channel and talk about that and some
Yeah.
ideas, champions to look at. Theory crafting some potential ways to deal with it. But I'm also really excited about live arena. We haven't had this. We've been wanting it for a very long time, and I think it's going to give a really nice boost to changing some of the metas and the ideas and approaches for
Yes.
arena. I'm actually really excited about this, so it should be fun.
Me too, man. Me too. I can't wait to get your take on the dungeons as well, but we'll save that for your vid. But yeah, man, I'm really excited about live arena, right? There's things that we're not sure about, obviously, but we're going to give, again, everything that we're doing right now to kind of prepare ourselves and our accounts. And we think that you guys should at least think about what you need to do too, because everybody's in a different spot in their accounts. And, you know, exactly what I'm doing or what Deadwood's doing might not make sense to you. But I think that before we get into like our game plan here, Deadwood, what are your thoughts on the format? Like the schoolyard pick'em of champions and then banning a champion. Do you like what they came up with there?
Yeah, I actually kind of do. It there. Here's the thing. None of it's gonna be perfect, right? Like I could easily see giving us 6 champions to choose from and still banning one or two. I could see them, expanding it way further or shrinking it down. Like there's so many different ways to go about doing this. But what is really interesting is no matter what way it goes, the pick five, negate one, it makes for some real interesting mind games, some strategy
It
approaches.
does. Yeah.
Also, like when do you pick your champions? Because what the other person picks is really going to affect what you're picking, right? If I know they have a Duchess, well, I'm going to want to make sure I have some kind of counter to that. They bring in, Ultimate Death Knight. I know that's probably going to be a big champion. What are we going to bring to counter that more to?
Right.
Same thing. So I think it could be really, really interesting. Obviously there's some things we're all concerned about because we just don't know what it's going to be. But,
True.
I'm hopeful and really optimistic that this could be a very fun and, very interesting addition to the game. I think that's going to be a kind of a cool thing.
Me too, man. I'm super excited for all the reasons that you said too. I think that it is a very fun in terms of the strategic elements that it introduces to the arena. And to your point, man, like if you have one like OP champion with all your best gear on or whatever, do you save it for last? I imagine so. Or like the order that or do you try to like fake people out by thinking you're making a speed team, but then you shift it on your last 2 picks? There's so many mind games that goes into that I just can't wait for it, man. But I guess I'm going to start. First of all, it looks amazing, huh? Like the new arena
Yes.
art and stuff, dude.
Always.
That's really,
Always.
really nice.
Always good.
I love
Super
it.
nice.
So we have a 30-minute time limit on this new arena. So for me, that doesn't mean much. I mean, hopefully we're winning every single arena battle or losing in 30 minutes, right? But people are complaining about like the fact that there's only 4 battles a day. But to me, if it can take up to a half an hour, man, that's a lot of time. And if you're doing that every day, it's going to be a big time commitment. So I'm okay personally with the 4 battles a day. Are you cool with that?
I mean, I'm fine with it. I don't. I know everybody's saying 4 battles a day. I thought it was 4 time areas and not just battles, but I'm probably wrong about that.
Oh, you might be
But
right. You might be right. Yeah.
whatever it is, I think it's fine. Honestly, it's something new, but not just the same old thing. It's something different. And for me, that's super exciting, right? Like, as far as like time commitment in this game, I'm down for it. Obviously, I'd rather more than 4 battles
Yeah,
alone,
so it
but I
says
think it
4
is 4
times
time
during
periods.
the day. Yeah. So it's open for
Yeah.
4 brief time periods, you means? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that'll actually incentivize people to do more of the fights as well. So the
Yeah.
time limit
And it
factor
will help with
isn't
the
probably going to be as
matchmaking.
big of a question. Exactly,
That's
exactly. So like
interesting.
I've done
Okay.
this. It's been like this in other games. I was doing Diablo Immortal and they had that where they have a PvP area and it would last for like an hour and a half or an hour. and they'd happen at certain set times in the day. So you just jump in, you can try to get in as many fights as you can, and
Interesting.
have
How
fun
long in
with
those
it.
games
But
was it open for?
think about 90 minutes, if
Okay.
I'm not mistaken. Like an hour or 90 minutes, something like that.
Okay.
It wasn't a crazy long time, but definitely enough where like you could sit down and play for a while if you wanted to,
Got you.
and
Got
some
you.
people were really dedicated, and some people would just go in a couple times a day and, just get a couple fights in and kind of do whatever daily
Yeah.
requirements were listed of them, right? And I think
Okay.
that option is going to be available here.
That definitely makes sense as well. So, okay, let's get into strategy here, man. I'm going to give you my strategy rundown and tell me what you think of it. So, number one is I'm going to pause the video here and go to my game here. So, number one, we have Forge Pass right now. And right now, during this season, it is a bolster set, which is so incredibly powerful. There's still 2 weeks, probably 4 days by the time this goes live, open on it. So, like, I think that bolster, not just the regen, but obviously the protected shield is so important
Yeah.
along with stone skin.
Yeah.
So the first thing I'm going to do, or actually the three things I'm going to do in terms of artifacts, is I am going to make sure that I'm focused on Forge Pass this season, Deadwood. And then I'm going to make sure I am using, and I don't know about you, but I slack so bad on my Doom Tower farming. But I'm going to use all my keys on Dark Fae every single day this rotation, just to make sure
Yeah.
that I'm getting as much lethal gear as possible, because lethal and savage and then stone skin and bolster to me are the four like best or maybe most meta sets right now in the arena. So I want to have all that gear, as good as possible by the time that this goes live. So that's what I'm going to do gear wise. And then I guess the other thing is I'm going to use most of my energy right now on Sandel's Necropolis, right? So I want to get
Mm.
the champion. I'm going to try to get a team of like 5 or 6 champions. I'll talk about how I'm going to do that in a minute, but I'm going to want to get like 5 or 6 champions, my go-tos, and my goal is, and obviously I am end game here, so it might not be to get all fully ascended artifacts on everybody's account, but for me, that's my goal. I want to get a fully ascended set on every one of my top champions that I've identified as my arena specialists, building them for the arena. Let me pause
Yeah.
there. What do you think so far?
I think that's actually like I think there's a couple interesting things you're saying in there. Obviously, bolster set is one of the best sets in this game, right?
Yep.
Not only is it basically a regen set, but it's a shield set too, and it can't be removed. Like it's unbelievably important, especially in arena right now, as far as like being able to survive. And with this setup, you don't know if you're gonna go first, even if you have the fastest champion in the game. They can be banned like that. So you never really know if you're going to be able to go first. And because of that, I think being able to have some kind of inbuilt defense on your team is going to be really
Yes.
important. So yeah, 100% think bolster is a great way to go with that. Obviously you need your damage sets, right? Whether that's lethal or savage, whatever it is, that's always going to be important just because you have to kill the enemy. The part about the ascension in the Sand Devil Necropolis, I think, is a really interesting idea. And I think that's a really kind of, next level thinking about that is like you don't need all your gear ascended. You just need the gear for your best champions ascended. And I
Yes.
think that's a really good way to focus it. And actually makes Sandoval a lot more manageable. I think when you look at it as a dungeon as a whole, is like, hey, look, I just need to get these 5 champions, these 6 champions really with their gear at the top level possible. And I think that's a really, really smart approach when it
Thanks,
comes to
Deadwood.
that, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, man, because I always look at them like I need to get all my gear ascended.
Yeah,
And it's
it
just
can be
so
daunting,
overwhelming.
overwhelming. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
But I don't need to do that. I just need to get my best pieces done like that.
Okay.
And I think, identifying it that way, and honestly, even just going champion by champion and just going, okay, I'm gonna get this guy fully all
Yep.
his gear ascended, and this guy. I think that's actually much more approachable way to tackle it. And I think it's a good way to prepare for this dungeon.
Thank you.
That's probably something I will be doing now.
Thank you. So now my champion choices, right? So what I'm
Yeah.
gonna do is I am, and you might disagree with this, Deadwood, but I'm
Okay.
not gonna focus on go first at all, right? Because you just mentioned you never know if you're gonna go first. My Arbiter, who has all my best speed gear, could be banned, and then my whole strategy is out the window for the most part, right? So I am not, unlike regular arena where I feel like 99% of players are just trying to max out their Great Hall. So going first still is the most popular and viable strategy. I feel like for live, I'm just going to focus on getting 3 of my best support champions possible, like this team that I'm running right now, and then 1 or 2 nukers built, right? To go along with those support champions, ideally someone who can ignore a bunch of defense. So whether that's, maximizing my Vogoth in a bolster set, or whether that's going, super endgame, I'm only going to focus on that sort of a strategy. But I want to add like one little curveball in there. And I like to unlike the team that we see right now, which is super meta for like platinum, I actually
Right.
want to get a surprise champion or two that has like a really good build to it, you know? So it might be like a very high resist Beauregard the Elder for the increased defense or increased resistance, something you don't see a lot of, right? Because if
Yeah.
I know one thing, people when they see champions, they almost always know, okay, if they play a little bit, they know how they're going to be geared out. But if I go with a curveball, so my guys are going to be maybe a Beauregard and maybe a Bath Satha, who's like a champion you don't hear a lot about, but he's a Doom Tower hard champion who
Sure.
stuns when they're revived, you know? So it's a little bit of a weird thing that can't be resisted. So anyway, I'm kind of rambling here, Deadwood, but that's my strategy is like
No.
some off meta picks and a go second strategy. Are you going to do the same thing, or do you think there's any rationale to just building a go first team? You know?
I don't think there's well, you know what? Okay, so it's an interesting balance, right? And this is
Yeah.
a great part about going against other people. I think there is definitely a place for a go first team
Okay.
because almost everybody's going to be building go second teams. And so
When
by
they zig, you zag,
countering
right? Yeah.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
Like because look, if 90% of the people are building go second tanky teams, well, hey man, let me go in with my go first team and just decide to go a different way. I think in that vein actually, the go first teams you're going to be seeing aren't going to be teams with like arbiters or siffies and stuff like that. I think they're going to be teams with just a Kymar, a really fast high accuracy Kymar
Yep.
going very fast, stripping enemy buffs and ensuring your team goes first as a result, right? So like there are going to be a variety of approaches with this. And I think, also we should probably differentiate, right? There is the high level end game players and then everybody else, right?
Sure.
Because those plat high end game players, they have champions. I hate going against them personally because they only have a warlord that's faster than my my
Of
stiffy,
course.
right?
Of
And
course.
they,
Of course.
I mean, so they have these champions that are able to provide additional functions and still go first, which is like the really scary parts, right? For I think people maybe not quite in my, don't have quite, as good an account of mine, but or as good, but not the gear and lower. You're going to be wanting to think, there's going to be a variety of ways to do this. So for me personally, I'm thinking about I'm going to want 8, 10 champions set up so that I can have a couple different strategies and see which one's going to be best and what teams I'm going to be going against. And one of the great things about the pick'em part of it is I don't have to bring my speed champion in till later, right? So I could make that my last pick. Everybody's going to need 2 damage dealers, and I think that you're 100% right on that because if they cancel one, you need a backup, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that just goes without saying. So then what do you do outside of that? You're going to have to be able to protect them if you don't go first, right? So like you said, bringing 3 solid support, I think is a really great way to go with that, right? You're going to see a lot of Versugas, you're going to see a lot of Brognies, you're going to see a lot of Ultimate Death Knights, a lot
Oh, a
of
lot of ultimate death
Necrits are
knights.
great.
Yep.
A lot of those, a lot of those. But then I think you're right about bringing in something like a curveball. I think at the higher end, you're going to see more traditional champions like, Kymar, Yumeko, Warlord, even more to Macabre. Those are going to, I think that's a different type of curveball that you're going to be seeing fairly consistently. But I love if you're not at those kind of meta levels, yeah, bring in somebody a little bit differently that might add a little something to your team could be really cool. I think you're going to see a lot more Rondas, for example.
I think that
I think,
Rhonda overall, we'll say this for the dungeon video, but I think in a lot of different areas, I think that Rhonda's going to shine here. But I agree with you.
yeah. Yeah, but I mean, being able to lock down somebody's skills is, I think, just a massive ability. But yeah, I don't think you're wrong at all. I think you're 100% right about, wanting to make sure that you have that kind of balance, and that's typically going to go with 3 support and 2 damage dealers.
Yeah.
And having those champions set and ready to go, I think is going to be good. I do think preparing to go second is also a smart approach to things. Although it seems like that's what most people are doing in this game right now, anyways, at the higher level. So maybe it's not going to change the metas too much, but
Yeah.
it's gonna be real. I'm real kind of curious about this because there's champions like Lix and Astralon that pair really well together. Do you cancel one of them just to break that up,
I
or do
know,
you
right?
put
There's
them
going to
both
be
in your team to like
to
invite
bait
a
them
cancel of
into
one of them?
bait them into canceling.
Exactly,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
This is what I love about it though, the mind games, Ben. But like to some of your points there, here's
Mm,
other things that I would recommend really everybody do, right? So if I'm gonna build a go
yeah.
first team, or if because of the draft, to your point, if it dictates that I'm gonna, hey, I have an opportunity here to go first, I have to have an answer to Stone Skin because it's everywhere, right? So with that said,
Yeah.
you mentioned Kymar. That's exactly where my head was going. But I want at least 2 champions on my account built that have buff removals, right? So there's a lot of them actually. There's like who's that banner lord? Like Yasmina or something? I don't know. But there's like Madame Ceres, Ryan the Conjurer, Prince Kaimar, Cornelia doesn't have a buff remover, but she has to sleep. Basically, I want 2 champions on my team, ideally like a Kaimar and a Ceres, to have 2 shots at removing that stone skin, because even with a speed team, if I'm going against a heavy stone skin team, like I'm usually not even winning, even if I have like, if I go first, just because stone skin's so hard to move, to get around, and if I kill somebody, inevitably they have someone else ready, to revive or something like that. So I want 2 buff removers built on my account. I think everybody who has him, which is most people watching, everybody should probably have an Ultimate Death Knight in a slow Stone Skin build, right? Because it's just one of the most, I hate to say it because it's so annoying and everybody seems to have it already, but like, that's just a tough, tricky thing that changes the complexion of any arena fight that you have to be ready to respond to or get around, or you're screwed. So I think that having that, I think that will be banned a lot. I think people will just say Ultimate Death Knight and be like, I'm not only feel like going against Ultimate Death Knight, I'm going to ban. So it's ban bait at the same time. It's like, it's nice to have for everybody. So that's one thing I would have. And then the last thing is I'm actually going to invest. I would recommend everybody invest in at least one deny revival champion, right? Because I feel like there's so many revivers in the meta right now, but especially with Pytheon added and obviously Duchesses. And I mean, I can just keep going on and on. Revivers are everywhere. So for me, I want, like an Ithwi or a Fenax with his A1. Like, if you go against a Warlord team or a Yumeko team or a Basher team or any of those control teams, like Fenax's A1 is strong enough to kill anybody and block revival. So, investing in a block reviver to sub in when I'm going against a heavy revive team, I think that's great. Fenax I think is great because, again, Yumeko Warlord doesn't mean anything to him. So it's a good kind of sub in option.
Yeah, that's actually a really good call. I think Phoenix does have a lot of value right now. I'm really excited. I think champions like Uko too, another champion that can remove buffs is a really great option, especially because he places block buffs as well.
Oh, it's so strong. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really interested to see how this goes because I feel like there is a lot of bait and switch options that are going to be available out there for people. And I'm really interested to see how that all plays out. I think you're right about the bolster set. I think that's going to be incredibly important, incredibly valuable, simply because, having something that can't be removed, something that will protect you from that first hit is going to be crucial. I think, it's going to be fun to I have a hegemon on my account, and I think it's going to be really fun to present the enemy with some options of you can let me hegemon your team first and hopefully lock in some skills, or maybe I bring in, I'll have my Yumeko out there and reset your cooldowns a different way. Having those two things, which poison do you want to pick, could be really interesting. Or having a Kaimar in there, for example. I think at the high levels, a lot of those strategies are going to be really interesting. At the lower levels, I think it's going to be even more interesting because the pieces won't all fit, right? I know I've been doing my free to play for about 2 months now, and I know with that free to play, I've only got so many solid champions. So if you negate one of them, I really have to figure out, okay, how can I make this work no matter which one of these 5 champions gets removed? What kind of team does that turn this into for me? And do I have counters depending on what I see from my opponent in the arena as well? And I think it's going to be fun. I mean, personally, I think it's going to be fun. It'll probably be a little frustrating for some people because you don't have all the options you want to play with.
Of course.
But I think it's going to really, lend a lot more viability to building some different champions for Arena. You can get some of those B tier champions and have a lot of fun with them, like Basher. I think you mentioned him.
Yeah,
a really good option for that.
Like Basher and Stone Skin. Yeah, experimenting with whatever B tier champions, even in Stone Skin, they can totally change the complexion of an entire match. You don't need. Oftentimes, I'm sure we've all been there, right? But you underestimate a different arena team because you're like, who are these epics they're using or whatever, and then you're like, oh my god, they just smoked me because I just didn't stop and think that they could have some unorthodox builds that I'm just not prepared for. So I'm with you, man.
100%.
Experimenting a little bit outside the box with the resources and the champions that you do have. I mean, that's what it's all going to come down to, right? And the good news is, I guess, is that, for 99% of players out there right now, you're not going to be matched up against it's not like you're going to have to worry about going against the best player in the world or the biggest spenders in the world. The idea here is win as many battles as you can to develop your new Great Hall, right? And that will help you out in every other area of
Yeah.
the game. So, listen, unless you have any final thoughts here, I'm excited to go talk dungeons on your channel, Deadwood. But I'm excited, man. I think we both covered a lot of things that people can do right now, or at least start thinking about to prepare themselves for live arena.
Hold on, Wash.
Yes.
Has it not been an hour yet? This is way
I
too
know,
short. Our
man. I
collabs
know.
have to go 60 minutes, right?
We did a 20
No,
minute collab, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm gonna tell you the last thing I'm really actually kind of interested in, and a lot of this the big brains in Raid are gonna come with great strategies for us, right?
Sure,
Like, you
sure.
and me, we're here talking about ideas and theory crafting, and that's a good starting spot. But we're both waiting for the big brains, the high end plat finishes, the wanna messes of the world to come up with some really great ideas of how to actually win this thing. But something I'm really curious about is the counter to Stone Skin or bombs. But
Yep.
bombs generally take a lot of champions to set up those teams. I'm really, really interested to see what live arena strategies there are for a bomb approach. And I think that's going to be really fascinating to watch. And the counter to that, because like a lot of times those Mythrola teams are the natural counter because she has so much resistance.
Yep.
That's an auto ban if you
Yep.
have a bomb team. And then, how do you set your team up, right? Yeah. Champions like Yoshi
Yeah, I was
or
gonna
Lady
say,
Kimi are
like,
really popular.
it's a champion worth looking into because he brings in that increased accuracy and increased attack
Yep.
and the true fear.
Yep.
So he's got like this
Yep.
ability, Battle Toast. I mean, this is the best bomb setup in the game, by far.
Exactly.
So definitely a cool
I
champion to look into,
I love using Lady Kimi for that same
Yes.
kind of reason,
Yeah.
and so it's going to be really interesting. I'm interested to see if we see more immunity as opposed to Stone Skin because of some of that stuff, and it's going to be I'm super excited and interested to see how these meta change because for myself I think it's be real fascinating, just real fascinating to see how this all works out.
Me too, man. Me too. I can't wait. And, sure enough, we'll have Deadwood back on the channel talking about the new dungeons and the new live arena when it comes out, guys. So be on the lookout for that. In the meanwhile, this collab is not done. We're going to go ahead and continue the conversation on Deadwood's channel about the 4 new dungeon bosses, new and improved dungeon bosses in, what is it, Nightmare mode? Hard mode? Nightmare?
Hard mode.
I'm getting ahead of myself with the nightmare. Everybody's like, no, Ash, no. Hard mode. So go ahead and find us. There are the links in the description below, along with Deadwood's amazing website, help you speed tune anything in the world, and much, much more on top of that. Thank you for watching, and as always, take care, guys.